Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula is here. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Audit the Vote Tuesday. Usually we do the election update, but today I had to bring somebody on long overdue. I should be smacking myself across the head silly for not having this person on sooner. She is an election integrity activist. She is joining us today to give us some insight on how we get and how we achieve clear, fair, transparent, and trackable elections. You might have seen her on the Allison Morrow show about a couple weeks ago. She was over there, and she's been making a lot of noise in North Carolina, really stirring up some of those election officials. Ladies and gentlemen, from Transparent Elections, Lynn Bernstein is in the house. How you doing, Lynn?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Long overdue, like I said, long overdue. Why don't you tell everybody out there in election land your story? But when you're done telling your story, before we get to the solutions, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to leave YouTube. Unfortunately, we still can't do this on YouTube. We don't know if it's a clear area. As you know, our channel's been demonetized for 2 years now. It was for talking about elections, so we can't take the chances. However, the Rumble link is right there in the chat. It's right there in the description. I shared it with Lynn, too, as well, so her friends can see it. We sent it over to our good friend Kelly Lane. Hopefully she's watching. But we're going to hear Lynn's story about how we got there, how we got here, what she's all about. And then we're going to stop and we're going to get off YouTube and go to Rumble and Rockfin only. If you're a Rockfin premium subscriber, you can go over there and watch that. In fact, if you are a Rockfin premium subscriber, we encourage you to go over and watch over on Rockfin. That is our free speech platform. But we are also doing it on Rumble. So we have multiple avenues. And we have 999 followers now on Rumble. So who wants to be that lucky 1,000? Please go ahead and join in. Lynn Bernstein, I'm sorry for talking so much. As you guys know, Fiorella is not here right now. She's actually on her way to the Donbass. So she'll be reporting on what's going on over there. She's putting her money where her mouth is. And she'll be back Monday, hopefully with a nice surprise guest that I have working. But right now, we're going to talk about elections. Lynn Bernstein, go ahead and take the floor. Tell us what Transparent Elections is all about, what you're all about, and what's going on. Go ahead.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so I got into election integrity work back in 2016 when there were actually questions going around about whether or not the 2016 election was fair. Believe it or not, there were people on the Democratic side that were voicing concern that perhaps the election wasn't as fair as people are voicing now about the 2020 election. So my background is in aerospace engineering, specifically testing spacecraft. And so I was involved with a group of women, Democrats from Wake County, where I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. And they were questioning whether or not the election machines that we vote on and that count our votes were tested properly. And so they asked me to look into it, and I did. And what I found really concerned me. And it was just something that I wasn't able to just ignore and let go. And so I started going to my local election meetings, both state and county, and just started learning about elections. And it seemed like the more I learned, the more concerning things were, and the more questions that I had. And so after I discovered that Wake County was not allowing observers in on election night as they're required to do by law, and they just weren't being transparent in general, I decided to start Transparent Elections NC. And we're a group of volunteers who get involved in elections. And so we go and we observe and we learn about the processes, and we make recommendations and suggestions to election officials about how they can improve their processes based on best practices and things like that. And so I did approach Wake County and I approached the state, and I did help change some of their audit procedure. Their audits are not robust enough still. But what we do is we get involved and we actually try to make changes at a grassroots level, really just improving processes and improving transparency. And the reason for my push for transparency is that I believe in this concept called evidence-based elections. And that really means that the election officials, yes, their job is to find the winners and losers of an election. But I also believe, and many other academics believe, that they also have the responsibility to prove to the electorate and to people who are running for office that they did find the true winners. And you do that by being transparent and giving over all the evidence that they have about how they came to their conclusion of who the winners and losers were. And so rather than election officials saying, trust us, which is what they're doing, they're saying, trust us, the people. What we're saying is, we want to trust the evidence. So show us the evidence and let us take a look at that. And collectively, I believe that if they did that, elections would be more fair and more transparent. And that's really the cornerstone of our democracy, is a peaceful transfer of power where people actually get a say in who their elected officials are.
So let me get this straight. You're a Democrat.
I am.
You're a leftist and whatnot.
Yes,
No, that's not an election integrity avenue. It's kind of funny because a lot of us who were in this game, at one point, it was mainly progressives, especially those who were kind of raising their eyebrows, not so much on the 2016 general election, but the 2016 primaries that really kind of freaked us out. What's going on right now with your local situation right now? Because from what I understand is that you've been shut out of the process. I mean, this is something that's like not really kind of known. We were told that it's only Republicans or conservatives that are not allowed out in the room. What's going on with your story, and what's happening over there?
Yeah, so essentially, I guess what's going on with me, I would say it's more of a first rights amendment issue, but it is definitely related to elections, and that I have been pushing Wake County to open up their doors on election night for several years. I've gone to other counties to see their processes, and they're very transparent and open. And for some reason, Wake County wasn't allowing, and they still aren't allowing people in on election night as they're required to do. And so my mentor and a great election integrity advocate, John Brakey, he runs the organization called Audit USA, and I'm a board member in that organization. And he came to North Carolina for the municipal election back in May of 2022. And we decided we were going to hold a small protest outside of the Board of Elections building to bring light to the fact that they are not being transparent. And John and we went up there on a Saturday just to scope out a place, make sure that we could find a safe and legal place to hold a protest. And for some reason, they were aware that I was coming before I actually got there. And so I had parked across the street because there were a lot of signs that said no parking. And so we just parked across the street and walked along the road to kind of find a place to protest that was coming up in the next couple of days. And so they ended up calling the police on us, saying that we looked suspicious. And this was before we even exited the vehicle. And they called the police on us and said, please come up here. These suspicious people, they've caused trouble in the past and things like that just weren't true. And so then and then at some point while we were walking and scoping out a place, they called the police a second time and made up a story that we were tampering with a closed gate in order to gain access to the Board of Elections building. Fortunately, even though it seemed like they had really tried to hide that video, the security video that we requested immediately afterwards, because we knew it would show that we weren't doing anything. We did finally get that after several weeks. And it shows that we weren't doing anything. However, it's this weird rule where and I think most states have this, any if you own a private business or private, if it's your own private residence, you can have somebody trespass from your property. And that just means you call the police and you say, hey, I don't want this person on my property or at my business. And the police will issue that person a trespass notice. And that just means that if they ever do come on that property again, they will be arrested and charged with criminal trespass. And so the election director, Gary Sims of the Wake County Board of Elections, he had the Raleigh Police Department trespass me and John Brakey. And that meant that if I ever go onto that Board of Elections property again, I will be arrested, charged with criminal trespass. And then for the first time ever in my life.
By the way, I want to remind the audience right now, this is a leftist here that's going on to look at her elections, and she's being told that if you step foot on there, you're going to be arrested. I mean, I think this proves a point that the ruling class or whoever's behind the curtains of these elections doesn't care whether it's a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatsoever. They don't want full transparency in our elections. Would it be safe to say that?
I do think that especially Wake County and the North Carolina State Board of Elections, they have really been pushing back on transparency for many years. When Gary Sims, says, "Oh, she's been causing trouble," I think what he's referring to is the fact that for the 2020 primary, I was the lead at-large observer for the Democratic Party. And I trained our observers and I trained them to look for certain things and to report on certain things. And what I discovered during that election was that they were processing their absentee ballots illegally in a way that would really open the door for insider fraud. And then what I discovered was that that was happening all over the state. And so I brought it to the attention of the board that, hey, you're not following the law. And I ran it pretty much up every flagpole I could, trying to be somewhat discreet about it and saying, hey, maybe you guys aren't aware, but you can't do this. It turns out they were fully aware that they weren't allowed to do that. And they
did it anyways.
And the only reason I noticed was because I was at the meeting. Like I went to that meeting where they were opening envelopes for absentee ballots. And I'm following one envelope kind of all the way through.
Hold that thought for 1 second.
Yeah.
Because we're going to dump off YouTube right now, guys. This is the chance now. Go to Rumble because these are the things that they try to hit us with strikes on and stuff. Elon Musk was coming to Twitter to restore some transparency and kill censorship. But I got censored that night on election night for pointing out stuff in the Las Vegas elections that were just the rules. So once again, we're going to leave YouTube right now. Here's the chance now. I don't know who's in the chat there. Lucky, if you're there. Is Jilly Love returned? Have we heard from Jilly Love? I don't know. Hopefully she's okay. Send Jilly Love our love once we get news from her. DC is in the house. Guys, we're leaving YouTube now in 3, in 2, in 1. Goodbye, YouTube. Go over to Rumble. All the links are there. We're out.